All right, welcome back, everybody. Anybody that's new here, thanks for joining me today. For all you guys that aren't new here, this is a requested one for you. I bet you every year everybody's probably asked me to do something very similar to this. I'm gonna break this down starting this year. We'll see how much I remember to do next year. If you guys keep bugging me, I'm sure I'll do it just because I can't stand it. I gotta answer some of your questions. But this is gonna be all about. I'm going to try to break down where to start finding fall bluegills before ice season. So this isn't for anybody like below the ice belt. So like south of Nebraska, south of Tennessee, like anywhere you don't get ice. I'm going to say this might not work for you guys. It might. So you can always try to apply it if you're not from around the ice belt and there's no ice season, but winter. So like when the water gets cold, this might help you guys out. But we're chasing big bluegills. That's what I'm trying to teach you guys, and basically how to start looking for them, and like how it's going to be the process I go through. It's a really quick process I go through every single time I want to go out and fish bluegills, and I haven't been targeting them for a while. This is what you guys need to do. Okay, guys. This is going to be. It's either going to be really simple or really difficult for most people to understand. Okay, so like I was saying, it's going to be something that you're either going to understand or not understand. Comment below if I need to go into better details. I'm going to try to go... So here's the deal. If you're chasing bluegills, big ones, you can catch little guys pretty much anywhere. Throw a worm on a hook, toss it into some weeds, toss it along the flat bottom somewhere. You'll find bluegills. Like, it's not a very difficult thing. Some people have a very difficult time doing it, and you're just overthinking it. Hook, worm, split shot, bluegills. I know one of you guys that subscribed, that's all you do. That's all you ever need to do, and you catch some bluegills. But when you're trying to find the biggest bluegills and the highest concentrations of numbers in the fall, this is what you need to do. You need to become very familiar with one presentation, followed by another presentation, followed by another. So like, I'm going to say 3 is the best. It's about the most you actually need to understand. The first presentation, I have a video on this. If you guys go back through if I have playlists, I have a bunch of playlists. So if you're new here, I have playlists for everything. And I made it that way so that if you need a specific thing to learn on, you can actually watch a whole playlist and learn. These are drop shots. These are pre-rigged drop shots. This is a 6-pound test. These are little walleye wide gaps. They work perfect. I have a video on this, like I said. I'll put it up here right now, but if you guys watch the rest of this video, just look up my pre-rigged, just type this into the search bar on YouTube. Pre-rigged drop shot rigs DWS. Type that in, this video will come up. You need to understand how to build a drop shot, how to vary its length, and how to use it. I have videos on how to use them too. But basically, you need to become very familiar with the drop shot rig, number 1. You could also use just a jig and like a half of night crawler or something like that. But where you're gonna start, and the easiest thing I can say is, so like if you're an ice fisherman, this is the number 1 thing for, like I said, this is why it's more ice belt based. If you know of spots in the winter, in the past, where there have been high numbers of bluegills caught, so like even if you've only heard of it, maybe you haven't necessarily fished this lake, but you heard that like that bay or that weed edge or that flat had a bunch of bluegills on it over the years, the easiest thing to do is understand that and then go to the deepest water right next to it. Now, sometimes you'll get really lucky and say this is where they are for first ice, and that's what I'm saying. You find out about that, you know that they're going to be in that area, you rewind to the bottom of that break line. So this could be a quarter mile, this could be 100 feet, this could be 2 miles. Like, it just depends on the lake you're fishing. How clear the water is, there's a ton of variables. But you guys will ask for this, so I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible. I don't want to make this like a 2-hour video, because I could very easily will do that with bluegills, because there's a lot to know about them. But I'm trying to simplify it. So First ice you hear about or know about, they're in this area. Like I said in my other panfish video I did, the one that you guys commented on, all this stuff, it's a rewind of what happens in the spring. So same thing. If you know there's bluegills in this area in the spring, go down to the bottom of that break line. Now, sometimes, like I said, you'll get lucky. Those fish will cruise that break line. They'll literally use it like a highway in the fall. But the thing is most big bluegills in the summertime are out in deep water. Most of them. Most lakes have them. Some lakes are unique and they'll stay in this shallow water all year round. But most of them go out in the deep water. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to that break line next to where you know they end up in the spring and in first ice. Late ice too. So spring, late ice, or late ice, spring, late fall, like early ice. So like right when the ice happens and you guys get big numbers of them. Where they're at there, you go out there. So start at this break line. And what I really like to do, so if those fish, will like pretend I'm in a boat. That behind me is where this is. That's where that special area is. It's not, I'm not being specific here because it can be very different for any body of water you're on. But needless to say, whatever the deeper water is over here, that's gonna be where they're at all the way till like the end of October, November, depending on when your lakes freeze up. If your lakes freeze up at the beginning of November, you're gonna have September, October probably, and November's first ice, they'll already be up in that area. But so go from that break line, put your back to that break line, and it's really hard to do without electronics, but if you can get a good breeze, like a 1 to 3 mile an hour breeze, even if you don't have electronics and you can figure out where the edge of that break line is, put yourself there, and if you can get a breeze that, like I said, you put this special area behind you, you drift. So take a drop shot, like I said, you gotta be familiar. This isn't a drop shot video, but you gotta be familiar with that because it's the easiest way to do this. You can also Lindy rig, but a lot of times you'll end up getting walleye. That's not what this is about. The drop shot, 1 to 2 feet off the bottom, whatever. You start at the break line, and if they're not right there, which usually September, October, November, they're there because they're getting ready to go up shallow for first ice, mainly to feed on insects and stuff like that, and when the water finally turns over, they can travel up and down. I talked a lot about it in the last video. We're not going to go into that, but like I said, the first place you start is there. So you start at the break line, drift, and fish your drop shot out into the basin or wherever you have the deeper water. And like I said, this is all dependent on the lake you're on. So that special area, first ice, might be 2 feet deep, and that deep spot might be 10 feet deep. Keep that in mind. So keep that in your head for a future reference. Okay, so like I was saying, so you need to learn how to use the drop shot. Fish that, follow that break line out there, fish along the break line and out from that spot. Specifically, you have to know where they're going to go in the spring or late fall. But that's a good spot to start. Early fall. Mid-fall, they should be up against that break line. You should have an area. If you have a fish finder, you'll have areas where you'll cruise across it and you'll be like, no fish, no fish, no fish. And it'll seem like every fish in the lake is in that one spot. And that's what's really cool about fall fishing is the fish school up and get ready to shift positions. And when they school up like that, that's when you can go out and catch 200, 300, bluegills in a day. And if you're on a good bluegill lake, you'll catch 200, 300 decent bluegills with a bunch of really big ones mixed in. So that's like getting closer to fall actually being there. It's cold, the water temperatures are going down. But then you have this thing called turnover you got to deal with. If you don't know what turnover is, it's when the water all becomes the same temperature and the lake literally flips. It has to do with your thermocline disappearing and water from the bottom becoming the same temperature as the water on the top, from the top water being too cold, sinking. So cold water sinks, hot water rises. Cold sinks, hot rises. Keep that in your head, because When the top of the water becomes colder than the bottom of the water, it sinks and the bottom water raises back up, thus turning over the water. You have a really, really hard point of fishing for probably 2 to 3 days when that happens. Sometimes it takes like a week for a whole lake to actually turn over, and deeper lakes take longer, shallower lakes take less time. Sometimes shallow lakes will turn over in like the beginning of September because it gets real cold for a couple nights, and wind will do this, not just the heat of the water. But once you see weeds floating on the surface and the water could be clear one day and dirty the next, even though it wasn't really windy, it was just cold, that's the lake turning over. Go find something else to do for a little while. You can catch bluegills and stuff like that at that time, but it's not going to be fun. I'll try, like I've gone out and caught fish. It's not as fun as like if you just wait a week. Now wait a week, if the top is the same temperature as the bottom, fish can be anywhere, but now those bluegills that were stacked up on that edge are going to be up into the weeds or up starting into that flat, whatever your best first ice area is. They're going to be in that area working their way to their first ice spots. Or like I said, it's the exact same areas that they are in the spring and late ice. So if you know where they're going to be late ice, you're actually one step ahead of where they are right after the water turns over in that week afterwards. Now, this is like a kind of pressure cooker time, because usually once the water turns over, it's in like that 40-degree range. You're fishing cold water, shallow somewhere. So, like I said, warmer before pre-turnover, then they go up after post-turnover, so after the turnover. Once they're in your flat, your weed edge, all that stuff, that's when you catch the biggest bluegills pushing up, because they're going to be feeding first. Big bluegills are kind of like pushy. They like to get their stuff right away, and then you'll get little bluegills that come and go. But the big ones are, like I said, they're pushy. They're bold bluegills. They like to push their way around, and they get in areas, and you'll catch a couple dozen monster bluegills. And then your last chance is usually, like, if you see in the forecast that it's going to be like 30s for a high and like 20s for a low, right before that freeze, those bluegills will literally push right up into their shallow first ice spots. So spots that you've gone in the past or know about, like I said, in the past, so you can look at a new lake and actually understand that, like, this is how simple it is. If you know that the fish are going to be in that area, and like people are like, yeah, I've done really good on bluegills there in November or December, go there in the beginning of November and at the end of October, slip bobbers, all that stuff. That's what you're going to use to cover that area. So the big thing here is, those are two techniques. The one that I missed, that I don't use it all the time. If you guys follow me, I fish slip bobbers more often than not because you can be pinpoint with them. When pre-transition or post-transition, so like post-turnover, when they come up to the weed edge, they're just starting to get up on a flat, there's a trick. You can fish jig heads. I don't have one sitting around here right now, but you can fish like 1/4 ounce jig heads and a half a crawler, just like you would be anywhere else for walleye fishing, like bouncing them off the bottom. And a big way of doing this, and I'll try to do a video on this if I can catch it just right. Like I said, it's short window. When this window happens, you got to capitalize on it. I know a lot of you guys are out deer hunting, so you're not even going to bother with this. If you are not deer hunting, this is one of those fun ones that when you get good at it, you'll start pitching at weed edges or like up on flats where there's like rock, gravel weeds mixed around, like sparse weeds, stuff like that, depending on where the bluegills are going. And you can literally just cast it out, let the jig fall at the bottom on a tight line. A lot of times you get fish right there. You can cast off the brake line and bring it up the brake line, cast it up the brake line and bring it down the brake line. You can cast it right into the weeds and work it out. All of that fun stuff. And if there's big bluegills around and that's where they're going, you'll catch them on just a jig, and that's it. It's such a simple way of fishing. You can do plastics too. That was one of my favorite things for a long time, was using a small jig and an ice fishing plastic, cast it up into the weeds, bring it back out, and the big bluegills eat it up. You don't even need worms. But the next thing, like I said, is once you get to that point where you're right before the winter's setting in, and you know it's gonna start snowing, it's gonna be cold, you gotta dress real warm. There's no piers in the water anymore a lot of times, so if you guys are planning on doing it, try to do it together with somebody so that like one person can get in the boat, push it out, go park the truck, and then the other person can come back and like jump in the boat as the other person's maneuvering it. It's real fun when you're doing it by yourself. But needless to say, there's that whole period right before that where it's real cold. You just fish the same thing you would for ice fishing, you know, small slip bobbers, small ice jigs of some kind. Plastics work. I like red worms, if you can still find red worms in that period of time, but I'll literally use a half of a red worm, which you'd think like a red worm's already small. Half a red worm, when the water starts getting down in that high 30s, low 40s, and it's about to freeze that, you know, next week or the week after that or whatever. Enjoy that time because those fish are going to feed like crazy, and that's when you get the big bluegills basically in the exact same spots that they would be for first ice. So this kind of gives you that first ice idea too. So like basin, break line, weed edge, or flat or rocks, and then wherever they're going to be for first ice. So hopefully this one helps all you guys out that have been bugging me about the bluegills. Somebody, I'm sure one of you guys this winter or fall will go find yourselves a giant like that, because this is exactly what I do every season. And if you follow it step by step, slip bobbers are last, drop shots are first. So if you get out, drop shot, you can jig, so just a regular jig on a rod, whatever. So something like this, just a jig, and that's it. And then drop shot, jig, slip bobber. That's the order. Basin, break line, flat. I mean, I don't think I can make it any simpler than that. Basin, break line, flat. Drop shot, jig, slip bobber. Go out, give it a try. Let me know if you guys are successful. Comment below if there's anything else you want to know about it. Any specifics that I can kind of like point out. Maybe I'll just pin your comment. If anybody's got a really good one, I'll pin your comment. And then that way we can all just kind of go off of that. Like I said, I'm trying to do a couple of videos this year to get you guys basically so you understand what I'm doing, because like I'm really bad at doing the whole talk while I'm fishing thing. I can kind of point out what I did after the fact, but doing it in the time is really hard. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Obviously, if you're not new here, you know what's up. But if you are new, could you please just remember to